Like this.
What's up, y'all? We back again for another scary video. Scary stories, baby. And it get you scared. You know what I'm saying, y'all? Basically, don't forget to subscribe, comment down below, share it to your friends, your baby mamas that love horror stories, my ex-girlfriend that loves it.
Do you remember as a kid where you imagined
He looked like,
Hey y'all! I'm about to kill you.
dentists as some kind of crazy psychos who enjoy hurting people? And how they wanted to rip out all of your teeth against your will? Well, we all know now that we were just overreacting kids back then. But it wasn't exactly false for me. When one day, my childhood nightmare became a reality. And this experience is something that has forever left a mark and a trauma on me. Me and my boyfriend back then moved in together and wanted to start a new life in a new town. We both came from poor families.
I like how they stay on the phone, they right next to each other. Is they texting each other while they right next to each other? Actually, y'all, I don't understand. Y'all new age these days will actually do that. I be texting each other, y'all right next to each other.
With experiences of alcohol abuses. So, we couldn't afford much, and we had to work really hard to sustain our needs.
You notice that the frying pan is actually not on the stove when she's moving it. Hey, I can't say shit. I can't do nowhere near good as this 3D animation.
One evening, when I
Or this animation for, you know, the video.
came back from work, my tooth started to hurt a lot. I tried to ignore it because I thought I was just tired and it would eventually go away after some time. So I went to bed and fell asleep. But in the morning, the pain got worse. I told that to my boyfriend, and he started to worry. We didn't have any insurance because we hardly even have money for our basic needs. So for us, this was a big problem. We started to search through the internet and local magazines for dental clinics, but most of them were very expensive and clearly we couldn't afford them. My condition was getting worse to the point that I couldn't even focus on my work most of the time. Desperately, I called to my parents. I begged them for help and asked to send us some money, but they refused.
That's life, that's family for you. Oh well. That's not shocking though. A lot of people like that in family.
By now, you guys probably know what they were like, and that's the exact reason why I moved out from there. At the end of my shift, my boyfriend called me with some good news. He found a really cheap dentist in town, and he immediately made an appointment for me. He texted
Oh, hey to the no, to the no.
me the address and told me to be there at exactly 7 p.m. tonight. I packed my things from work and went to the bus stop. When I arrived there, I went into the building and sat down on a chair next to the clinic room. I could hear two people talking inside the room, so I decided not to interrupt and wait for my turn. After 10 minutes, some lady just ran out of the room like she was in a hurry or something. She dropped her wallet on the floor, but before I noticed it, she was already gone. Meanwhile, the door opened again, and a pleasant man's voice invited me in. I turned around and I could see a short, middle-aged man with a big smile. I greeted him and told him about the lady and the wallet she dropped. He said, "Oh, don't worry. She was in a hurry for a bus. You can give me her wallet. She's a close friend of mine and I'll give it back to her." I gave him the wallet and brushed off the situation. For the next few minutes, we talked and filed all the necessary papers. I told him about my toothache. He seemed so nice and funny. Then he prepared his dental equipment and I sat down on the chair. And after that, things started to get weird. He told me to open my mouth wide so that he could start the examination. I don't know why, but it felt like he was standing too close to me. Besides, shouldn't dentists sit down on their chair while working too? Then, I felt a rubbing sensation on my arm. It was so weird. I thought it was his leg, but later
He was getting his fill on. At the same time, while he doggone doing his job. Shit crazy as hell, y'all.
I realized it wasn't. I thought he wasn't doing it on purpose, so I tried to move my arm a bit, but his body followed my arm. He tried to chat me up to distract me from whatever he was doing, but I could feel everything. Then he stopped for some time, but a few seconds later, he just grabbed my arm and told me not to move that much. He was holding me really tight. I had enough, so I gathered my courage to tell him to stop.
Oh my gosh. This man is basically doing some shady ass shit.
But he just sighed. Fortunately, a few seconds later, he released my arm. After this confrontation, he started to act harsh and rude. He seemed like he was offended and didn't want to smile anymore. Nothing really happened after that, until I finished my dental appointment where he told me to come back again for a follow-up treatment next week. After leaving, I felt so scared of him and didn't want to go back.
Look at him. He is basically in the window. What the hell's wrong? Look at his face.
I could see him looking through the window of his clinic with a really angry
He look like a crackhead right now, y'all. You see his eyes, y'all? He look like a crackhead, like a real crackhead, like a bum.
or disappointed face, like he was expecting something from me. I told what just happened to my boyfriend, but he told me I was just overreacting and we couldn't afford any other dentist. So I should be grateful that he found me a clinic that fits our budget. I knew that he wanted what's best for me, but as I said, we were in a bad financial situation, so I couldn't complain and be picky in this time. I knew I had to go back there again, but at least he did his job and my tooth didn't hurt anymore. Fast forward to my second dental appointment. I was feeling so anxious right before the meeting, but unexpectedly, he greeted me with the same big smile as before. We chatted like nothing happened and he proceeded to the treatment very professionally. Everything seemed to be okay while he was treating me. This time, he sat on a chair and didn't do anything weird. In the middle of the operation, I was looking at him and he seemed nervous. We were sitting in silence for some time when, out of nowhere, he told me, "Hey, I really like your body. You are just my type." It was so confusing and it felt so awkward. I couldn't even answer him with a fully open mouth, but I started to move my lips.
He was up to getting a little fill on. I told y'all he's like that. Told y'all he up here trying to get a fill on. I said that before he even did it.
And replied, "I appreciate your compliment." Then there was just dead silence. I started to look around the room and I noticed the wallet. I realized it was the same wallet that I gave him a week ago after some lady dropped it on her way out.
I had a feeling that he is not going to give it back to her.
Something was wrong with this guy. My heartbeat was pounding and I started to sweat. Then he said, "Come to my apartment after the treatment, just for a tea." I immediately knew what was going on and I replied to him, "Thanks for the invite, but I have a boyfriend and I respect him, so I don't want to hang out with some other men." "Come on, I don't ask you to go to bed with me. Just for a tea. He won't find out," he replied. I refused again, but he insisted. He was trying so hard to convince me that he was literally forcing me to agree. The worst thing was he was holding his dental drill and started to become violent with it. He started to push it harder and harder into my teeth. I couldn't see, but I knew something bad was going on and he was intentionally doing it to me. I could feel more and more pain while he was doing this. "You will go with me, right? Just for a tea. Just for a tea, okay?" He was repeating it over and over again. I stopped replying to him, and now I was just looking for a way to escape. But I didn't want to hurt myself with all those dental equipment, so I just didn't move. I could feel he was drilling in my tooth harder and harder. I felt like crying from the pain, but I didn't want to show him that I am an easy target. Finally, I said to him, "Okay, I will go with you." His face instantly turned from angry to cheerful, and he said, "Sweet," with a big smile like nothing had happened. Then he stepped away from me to grab something from the table, and I took my chance to hit him on the head with any item next to my chair, and I ran away from the clinic as fast as I can. I wasn't even trying to look behind me if he was chasing me or if he was still inside. I just wanted to escape from this crazy maniac. When I ran out of breath after a few blocks, I stopped to take some air. Fortunately, I couldn't spot him anywhere. Then I realized something was pouring out of my mouth. It was blood. He did something to me, and I couldn't see how bad it was. I slowly placed my finger into my mouth and checked every tooth. I came across something that felt really weird. I counted all of them and realized that there was something quite missing.
I told you, y'all.
But then I realized he just drilled my tooth deeper into my gums. I came back to my house and told everything in tears to my boyfriend. He drove me to the police station and I gave a statement. They directed us to the state dental clinic to check for damages. The damages were so bad that they had to remove my tooth. I couldn't take it anymore and burst it out into tears. It was so hard for me because we couldn't even afford an implant back then. Meanwhile, the police drove to that guy's clinic to take him to custody. He insisted that he was innocent. It was just a medical mistake and that I was crazy. He testified that I made it all up. If you want to know how it all ended, then here is the harsh reality. Unfortunately, the law system favors the rich people, and he was only fined a few thousands as a punishment. I bet he had deals with the police too. He didn't go to jail nor was forced to close his dental clinic. I couldn't afford a good lawyer, so I couldn't do much back then. And this crazy maniac is still seeing patients. I remembered the name of the lady through an ID from her wallet and asked the police about her. They told me that the lady was reported missing about a week ago, and nothing more. Up to this day, all I'm wondering is that what he did to that lady and how many more women did that maniac sexually harass and have physically hurted over the course of his time operating the clinic.
We watching a hospital visitor? You know, description in the below.
In an old hospital on West Java, a young male nurse walks the halls, having just started his shift earlier that evening. He always works the night shift, where he prefers the peace and quiet it brings,
The mission look better than the last one. I just gotta say that, you know.
allowing him to deliver food and medicine to the patients without having to be bothered by the senior staff. On this particular
Why the behind his shirt look like a booty crack? Look! Don't that look like a booty cracky crack?
night, The first patient on his rounds was an old lady who had been diagnosed with cancer. When he entered the room, he saw a young lady sitting with her, talking and laughing. "Evening, ma'am. Please be sure to take all of this medicine," he said. Then the young lady looked up with a smile to thank the young male nurse. A few nights later, the male nurse delivered some food to the eastern wing of the hospital, where there was an old man who had been diagnosed with lung disease. He was surprised to see the young lady again sitting with the old man.
She still looks suspicious. What is going on with her? What is she doing wrong? Think she trying to seduce him because she nice looking young lady? I think so. I don't know what's going on at all. Is she the reason why they died?
Talking and laughing. "Evening, sir," the nurse said. "Here's your food. Please do your best to try and finish it." The old man and lady looked up and gave their thanks to the male nurse. The nurse couldn't help but think that it was a sad coincidence that the young lady had two of her relatives being treated in the hospital. The next day,
They're not
when he was
related.
taking medicine to a young girl with leukemia, he once again found the lady sitting, talking, and laughing with the patient. The nurse couldn't help but wonder how it was possible that this young lady could have so many relatives being treated in the same hospital.
No relatives. They're
At the
not
same
her
time.
relatives. Duh. Could have told you that. Oops, already did.
Later on that shift, when he found time to take a break, he saw the young woman sitting down in one of the hallways. He took a seat and started up a conversation. "Evening, miss. I couldn't help but wonder, are all those patients I've seen you visiting your relatives?" She replied, "Yes, they are." He said, "Oh, I'm so sorry that they're unwell." "Yes, but that's why I came to comfort them," she said.
She lying.
He thought that was really nice of her. And then they continued talking for several minutes, laughing and smiling the whole time, up until the point where he asked, "Miss, just what were you talking about with your relatives? They all seem so happy and relaxed with you. It seems like you're able to entertain anyone." She began, "Well, it's my duty to comfort them, to calm them, and let them know that their pain will soon be over, and we'll meet again, somewhere. I must pity them. Their time will soon be over."
Oh,
The
hell
nurse
no.
was shocked at what she had said. "What do you mean, soon be over?" he asked. "Oh, you'll see soon enough," she replied. He sat there, speechless. Then she gave him a wave and said, "I'm sorry, but I have to go. It's getting late, and I have other relatives to visit." Struggling to speak, the nurse croaked, "Of course. Have a nice evening." The young lady stood up, and as she turned, exposed a huge gaping
I told you something wrong. She ain't got no brain. Look.
hole in the back of her head. Then,
She's dead.
looking back at the nurse,
I told you
she
something wrong.
pointed straight
Oh,
at
hell
him
no,
and
look at her
said,
teeth.
"Your
Look at her
time
teeth.
will soon be over too."
Oh my goodness. Hey, that's why she basically killed him too. There he is. Car accident. Man, you keep this show on the
I
road.
was 26 years old when this incident happened. One day, I was taking a walk with my dog Molly. After walking 2 more blocks,
Yeah,
we
new
saw
dog,
3 men smoking on the porch
Alcide.
and talking to each
Don't forget
other.
to subscribe,
2
y'all.
of them didn't pay
Comment
attention
down
to me,
below.
but one
Share
was
this
staring
video
in my
to all
direction.
y'all people.
He was
to
a
all
bit
the
bigger
parents and
compared to the
everything.
other 2 guys.
And
He
Alcide's
looked like he
doggone
was in
family.
his 20s and was
Y'all
also
gonna comment down
tall.
below because I
I
know y'all
quickly
ain't gonna
looked the
do
other
it.
direction,
Alcide's
but
friends
then he
ain't
yelled
gonna
at
do it
me
too
from
either.
behind. "Hey, gorgeous,
They just
nice
watch the
puppy you
video and then
got.
they
Come
comment
over
on
here
his
and let
dog
me
on text
pet her."
messages.
Then I heard laughter coming from the other two men, so I ignored them and rushed over to my house. At first, I didn't tell my parents anything, thinking that it wasn't that serious, but I was wrong. The day after, I walked my dog as usual, but because I was feeling a little bit scared, I took pepper spray with me. I walked past the same house hoping not to
Doggone
see that weird
Alcide
man, but
takes
he
pepper
was
spray
there
on all the
again.
time, you know what I mean?
He was sitting on a rocking chair on the
He
porch,
looked
and when he
creepy.
saw me, he shot up from his seat. In fear, I picked up Molly and bolted down the sidewalk, trying to get away from him. But to my horror, he was chasing after me. He pushed me to the ground, making me fall onto the hard concrete floor and dropping Molly. I started screaming for help, for anybody to hear me,
What happened? Not even her
but
pepper
he
spray.
covered my mouth. Clawing at his hands, I realized that I had the pepper spray in my pocket. So I grabbed it and sprayed it in his eyes, and after a while, he eventually screamed out in pain and rolled
I'll be
off
beating the
my
hell
body.
out of him.
I
Bitch.
quickly got up and
Bitch.
picked up Molly. When I got home, of
I'll be
course,
beating
I
up.
frantically explained the situation to my parents. My dad, who was a retired Marine, wanted to go to that house, but Mom just told us to go to the police station. I told an officer what happened and showed
Told
him
you,
my
y'all.
injury, but they didn't really help me. A couple of months later, I started working at a 7-Eleven. One day, I was walking
7-Eleven.
home after my night shift,
7-Eleven. I mean, if that
and when I
is,
turned the corner, I
Benny
noticed a truck
wanted to
driving
make a song
slowly
with
and
LC
way
called
too close to the
7-Eleven. And it's
sidewalk.
gonna have
I
every
didn't
people
pay
be
any
like
attention at
7-Eleven.
first,
And then we gonna
but
be at
when
a
I was standing
7-Eleven
in front of
gas
my
station.
front door, I looked behind me and saw the same car. Two men were in the truck, and I could see that they were
Oh,
watching
hell
me.
no.
I told my parents again, and because of this, my dad was on the lookout in front of the house for a few weeks. Nothing really happened until that night. That night traumatized me, and the guilt still chokes me to this day. It was about 2 in the morning when Molly started barking at something out the window. Being too tired, I just shrugged it off and drifted back to sleep, until I woke up to the sound of Molly yelping in pain. I opened my eyes and saw my dog's lifeless body on the floor covered in blood and
Killed
a
her.
dark figure
Oh
over
my
her.
God, that's so
It
scary.
was him. "Do you think you could get away from me? No, you were wrong." He climbed over me and started punching my face. With my blurred vision, I kept on kicking and hitting the man, but he didn't even flinch. And next,
hell no.
I heard him struggling to get his belt off. Pure terror swept over my body. I let out a scream before he could cover my mouth.
Should have beat him up the last
All
time.
of a sudden, the door swung open. My dad held his gun in his hand, and my
Blow his
mom was
brains out,
behind
boy.
him.
Blow, blow, blow.
As soon as Dad saw the man, he shot him twice. The man screamed in agony, and I pushed him off of my body. Dad grabbed him and started beating him, showing no mercy, and Mom called the police. I then ran to Molly, but she'd already passed away. About 5 minutes later, the police arrived, and they arrested him. It turns out that it was not only that man, but also his other two friends who conspired this. Their plan was to break into our house, kidnap me, and rape me. Fortunately, they were caught and sentenced to 16 years in prison for multiple charges. Until now, I still live with my parents because of the fear of being alone. And I feel sorry for Molly. I really miss her.
Let's watch it, y'all. Don't forget
This
the
happened to
description
me
down
when I was
below the
9 years
video.
old.
Okay,
My
y'all?
parents were
Subscribe,
divorced,
comment
so
down
I
below,
had to stay with
Yowie.
my dad half of
And,
the week and with my mom
this
for
don't
the
look
other
that
half.
bad, Yowie.
It
That's
was
all I
pretty
gotta say, yo.
stressful because I had to move a lot of my things back and forth, and every time they saw each other, they would argue. Anyway, On a Thursday, I arrived at my parents' house around 10:45 p.m. When my dad dropped me off, I noticed that my mom's car wasn't there yet and her bedroom window was open. But I didn't think much of it at the time. I started to make my way to the kitchen because I wanted a snack before going to bed.
It's creepy, ain't it? Look
Then
at it.
I saw my mom in the kitchen, chopping
all that creep.
something. I immediately greeted her, but she didn't respond. I thought she was messing with me or she was sleepwalking because she was already in her pajamas. So
Is she
I
flowing?
came closer to her. I couldn't see her face because of her long hair, and her skin was much paler than usual. I tapped her on
That
the
ain't your
shoulder,
mama,
and
girl.
she slowly turned around. At that moment, I could definitely see that wasn't my mom.
I already
She
knew
was
that, didn't you?
grinning from ear to ear, and she wasn't chopping vegetables. She was chopping her own fingers.
Oh, hell no.
Blood was dispersed everywhere. Screaming, I ran upstairs to my room, shut the door, and hid in my
I have to
closet.
call the police.
However, the woman followed behind me quickly, and
I'll
I
call
could
the
hear my
police.
bedroom door open.
Why
Through
didn't
the
you call
crack,
police?
I could see that she was holding a knife and her hands were gushing out blood. I quickly locked my closet, but I think that the woman must have heard it. As soon as I locked it, she ran towards the closet. She tried to open it, laughing maniacally, and soon her laughter turned to screams. I thought I was going to die, so I just sat in the corner and cried. And I started thinking
See what I'm
about
talking
all my
about, y'all?
memories with my parents
I don't know why she
and
didn't
how
call
much I
police.
took our time together for granted. Then, all of a sudden, I heard my mom's car pulling up in the driveway. When Mom came inside, she saw the blood in the kitchen. She panicked and started calling out my name. The woman quickly escaped through the window as soon as she heard my mom's voice. After taking a couple of minutes to gather
I told
composure,
you to call the
I ran
police.
outside and saw my mom coming up the stairs. I gave her the biggest hug I've ever given and began crying again when she asked me what just happened. After I told her everything, she called the cops and my dad. The cops arrived in less than 5 minutes and my dad came shortly after. They tried looking for the woman, and since she left blood all over the house, they managed to identify her. It turned out that she escaped from a mental facility, then found my mom's house and sneaked in. She was arrested a week later, and she was in jail for a year for breaking into our house and then put back in the mental facility. Well, I haven't heard from her since, but I do hope she got the help that she needed.
Y'all loved
Hey,
it.
hell,
Dog
he
home.
paid.
Like
This is
Uncle
how we
Ricardo
do it.
and Alejandro say, drop them pennies down on that subscribe button, y'all. Keep it real with y'all. Keep it lovely with y'all. I know y'all keep it. You know I keep it 100, y'all. I hope y'all have a good day. You know it's hot outside. I'm burning up outside. You know I live in Waterford, so it's real hot outside.
Ain't no changing that. Come on, listen, Wayne. I turn the radio
Love
on.
y'all.
None of your
Have a
music
good
makes
day.
no sense.
Don't
I'm
forget to
about
subscribe to me.
And every song you
Love
gonna
this
say,
video.
Nike.
And share it, please. Please, 'cause I
That's
post
on my check.
all the
Like getting
time.
paid for saying
More
that,
than
ladies.
everybody that's do YouTube. Even more than a doggone person that basically don't even that bad at their YouTube. And people still subscribe to them because they got a whole bunch of subscribers. Yeah, I see it.